Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's Zoom webinar presented by the Chamber of Commerce for Greater Moncton. The title of today's webinar is Out of Crisis, Stabilize, Then Thrive. My name is John Wishart, and I'm the CEO of the Chamber. Bonjour à tous, bienvenue au webinaire Zoom de ce matin, présenté par la Chambre de Commerce pour le Grand Moncton. Le titre du webinaire d'aujourd'hui est Sortir de la crise, stabiliser, puis prospérer. Je m'appelle John Wishart. Je suis le PDG de la Chambre. We're very pleased today to have with us Matt Sims, who's the founding partner with Symplicity Designs, which in my consideration is one of New Brunswick's, if not Canada's, leading firms for organizational management and paradigm change and process-driven thinking. Matt likes to say, the thinking that got you here won't get you there, and I think we'll hear some of that this morning. I had the pleasure of growing up with Matt's dad, Merv, and later worked with him for a period of time, and I know that we're in good hands today with Matt. So before I turn the virtual podium over to him, I wanted to remind everyone that we do plan on having a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So you can pose your question at any time via the chat button, which is at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Just type your question, and I'll pose as many as we have time for to Matt after his presentation is done. And please also note that we've muted everyone's microphone except for Matt's. And with that, I'll turn the podium over to Matt to lead us today. Matt?
Perfect. I think, Xavier, you're still sharing your screen. I'm going to need you to stop that so that I can share mine.
It's done.
We go. Perfect. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Welcome.
There we go. Everybody see that screen now?
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect. Great. Okay. So, folks, we've been live doing these webinars now since Wednesday, the 18th of March, and the change even since the 18th of March has been unbelievable. But we've had the distinct pleasure of helping a number of organizations already move through that survive, stabilize, then move into thrive. And so, you know, just a little background. You heard a little bit about Merv's background, my father's background. What didn't get said in there is Merv was really responsible for bringing modern management systems from Procter & Gamble to JDI, and spent the last 12 years of his professional career as Vice President of Organizational Change. The reason why that's important is they went through 08-09, the recession. And that was, for anybody who remembers that and has any memory of how hard that was on the economy, you'll remember that the Irvings made it through pretty good. They managed to get through it, but it was some pretty tense times. So, you know, there's a lot of people who come out of the woodwork and say and wave magic wands about how they can help you in crises like this. And we're always leery of them. If anybody tells you they have a playbook for a pandemic, they're full of shit. They don't, unless they were around during the 1919 Spanish flu. Nobody really knows what's going on here. But what we do know is that there is a time-honored methodology to actually make decisions and learn from them quick enough as the market moves. And there's enough that we know now that we know we're headed into three periods. We're headed into the house arrest period, which we're all in right now. Then we're going to head into a period of 16 to 24 months of the touchless economy, where we're going to have oscillating times of physical distancing. We're going to have to rethink our businesses in that time period. And then we're going to run into a time period post-vaccine that is going to allow us to get back to some of the things, but at that point, customer behaviors, customer buying habits will have changed forever. And so this talk is about, it's not going to predict the time that all this stuff's going to happen, but it's going to help you get your hands around what are the best organizations doing to navigate a time like this. So before I get anywhere, I want to talk about safety, because I'm on the line with a bunch of fellow entrepreneurs, with a bunch of fellow business leaders. And folks, I love all of you because you're gritty and you don't wait for permission and you're already driving it. That's awesome. You also scare the hell out of me. And here's why. You have a higher risk tolerance than anybody else. And in a pandemic, I don't want you taking risks with safety. And so what I want you to think about is the most vulnerable person in your life, the one that you want to save from this. What advice would you give them? Take it. Take it. The issue is you will give yourself way worse advice if you don't think about it that way. And this is going to require all of us to rethink our mental models. If you don't know what mental models are, it's just a fancy term for how we interpret information. So information will come into you, you hear it, you then act on it. That is a mental model. There are a number of them that you need to change in a pandemic, and that's hard because at the end of the day, we're all 96% chimpanzee still. We're sitting there on repeat and repeat through habits and rituals we've built up. Folks, who watched a couple hand washing videos and went, wow, I haven't been doing that right for the eternity if I've been alive? Right? I mean, these are habits that we've built up over a lifetime, and they won't serve us in a pandemic. So what are the ones you need to rebuild? Think about that for yourself and your loved ones, because it's going to be really important as you move into what's safe for your colleagues, what's safe for your customers. You have a much greater responsibility to lead with safety first in this type of environment. Okay, folks, just a brief update on the pandemic itself. The talk I gave last Friday on this, total cases in Canada were 11,000. Total deaths were just over 200. We're 6 days later, folks. 6 days later, and we have 19,435 deaths. For those who don't know me, I'm a recovering academic. And by that, I spent almost 10 years of my life studying history. So when I look at the date, April 9th, the very first thing I think of is a group of boys from New Brunswick and Nova Scotia charging up the slopes of Vimy in 1917. This was the first date. So it's kind of fitting that we're talking about another global pandemic. And folks, this feels a lot more like war than it does peace. And in wartime, you need a different mentality, a different movement, a different cadence of action, a different urgency. So what are we all trying to do? We're all trying to flatten the curve. Why are we trying to flatten the curve? I hope by now you've heard enough people talk about flatten the curve, plank the curve. Folks, we're trying to flatten the curve so we don't overwhelm the healthcare system. So what's that mean? If you're in business, you need to understand constraints. The healthcare system has 3 constraints: ICU beds, ventilators, and number of practitioners, minutes and skills, people and equipment, and infrastructure. 3 things are the constraints. If we don't flatten the curve, we get ourselves into a lot of trouble here because we can't handle it. Folks, I happen to have a pretty good relationship with one of the deputy ministers of health in one of the maritime provinces. And when we talked just before this started, he walked me through the numbers. This is real. This is no joke. This is real. We need to flatten the curve. Now, what most people don't see on this graph is that the bottom axis is time. Length of time. Folks, we had a world record when it came to trialing a vaccine, 63 days, blew away every record known to human existence. The problem is that's just the first step. We are headed to no vaccine for 12 to 16 months. Bill Gates has spent $105 million already ramping up 7 facilities. He knows 5 of them are useless, but guess what they will be? Up and going and ready to produce by the time one of the 7 figures something out. That's what he's done already. So when a guy who predicted the pandemics in 2015 is put that kind of money into trying to figure out what's going on, I tend to listen to him a lot closer right now. I mean, I listened to him before because he's a pretty smart dude when it came to running a business and changing the world. But I tend to be reading his stuff very, very closely if you want to understand the pandemic. And you're going to have to understand the pandemic because the way the world reacts to it is going to influence the way they're going to interact with your value prop as a business owner. Right? Okay. What that means is something that I started this talk with. No matter where I look, Hong Kong, London, New York, Harvard, the message is the same. They talk about intermittent, and I'm saying physical distancing. Thank God the World Health Organization has changed that. Because folks, we're going to need all the social we can get going through this. We are social animals. Social distancing is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about physical distancing. But doesn't matter where I look, the answer is the same. We're going to go through several cycles of tightening and easing before we have a resolution to this. And if you listen to pandemic experts, we're going to go through other pandemics. We're going to go through pandemics every 7 to 25 years is the prediction. So, folks, this is a new normal for us as a human species. I keep putting these in so that you see them, that I'm not just spouting stuff to be a fearmonger here. And I would love for someone on this call to tell me they have a vaccine and this shit is over and we can just move on with life. It's not there though. I can't find it. That leads us to flattening the curve, staying home, and Premier McNeil in Nova Scotia famously saying, stay the blazes home. Or in Newfoundland, they said, stay the Jesus home. But I circled these things because staying home, my lovely fellow New Brunswickers, does not mean go to the park. And this is Google Trends mapping where your phone is. You are at the parks. Please tell your friends that staying home doesn't mean going to the parks. And stay home. This is a brilliant campaign by My Home Apparel. They've raised $75,000 for frontline workers in about 6 days, making these T-shirts, glassware, etc. So if you want a memory to make you smile, because there won't be many along this route about this pandemic, that might be one. My Home Apparel. So we got the pandemic outlook. Now let's go to the economic outlook. In the beginning, Goldman Sachs, Warren Buffett were saying this is a lot more like 9/11 than 2008. Okay. If you go back to the very first webinar we did, we said, folks, this isn't 9/11. It may be 9/11 for the economy, but there's a big difference. It's between March and September. See, 9/11 happened in September and it had Christmas to haul us out. We were mostly stabilized by end October and we had Christmas to haul us out. There's a whole bunch of people that are talking to the restaurants that are being opened in Italy right now, and the sort of dismantling of the temporary hospital in Wuhan and saying this is 12 weeks and we're back to normal. Yeah, I don't think so. The IMF just came out, and folks, the IMF is not prone to hyperbole. They are not prone to exaggeration. This was this past weekend. This is a crisis like no other. We are now in a recession. It is way worse than the global crisis, global financial crisis of 08-09. And you can see that a lot of people, when I was talking earlier here, were taking that little spike back up and saying, hey, we're coming back. Yeah, I don't look at New York right now. We're 7, 8, 9 weeks from the worst of this. And then we're going to go through the periods of physical distancing. I'm just trying to put this in front of you because we're in a recession now. We just haven't felt it entirely because you have a whole bunch of old contracts that exist. We're in a recession. There are 3 types of recessions. There's the V shape, the U shape, and the L shape. If any of you have visited Greece in the last 24 months, last 36 months, you know what an L-shaped recession looks like. If you've read the news, you know what that looks like. I mean, it just destroyed that country, right? We went through a V shape, U shape. Folks, there's an article that you can read on it. I suggest you read up on it, but really we get down to what does this mean? What are we going to go through as a country? What are you going to go through as an industry and a company? That's what you've got to get your head around. Okay, on the medical side, long-term suppression until a vaccine. On the economic side, we got to get liquidity into the market. And you're seeing the federal government and the provincial governments do everything that they can. The Red Cross moved at rapid speed to put a couple $100 in everybody's pocket very quickly who have been affected by this. CERB is actually working very, very quickly. There's some argument over whether the wage subsidy of 75% and all the technical rules they're putting around it is the right move. I'm glad I'm not in Ottawa right now, folks. This is an unwinnable set of policies they have to get through. And I'm very, very impressed with how quick they've acted to try and stabilize the liquidity, but now they got to deal with the health issue. And they still have to go back and do the technicalities around liquidity. Folks, that's the pandemic, that's the economy. Now, how are we going to lead through this? Because I don't want to take up more of your time than we promised here today. So I'm going to just walk you through 11 minutes of how to lead through this. You're going to go through a hockey stick of some sort. There's a classic framework. The difference, of course, is in 2008, 2009, we went down and then we came into a bear market that didn't stop until this pandemic. That's not the case on this hockey stick. This hockey stick is not going to be a straight line. Because of the physical distancing, it's going to be a lot more jagged coming out of it until we have a vaccine. So what I am hoping you're thinking in your organization is, how am I managing on the way down? And how am I getting ready to drive back out? We all have to reconceptualize and rethink how we deliver value. I know most of the associations are really struggling to figure out right now, how do I create value in this new world? Right? And I got to give credit. There's 3 chambers that I think have been rocking it. The Halifax Chamber's been doing a good job. The Fredericton Chamber's been doing a good job. And you guys at the Moncton Chamber have been doing a great job of getting pertinent, meaningful information in bite-sized chunks into our inbox. If anybody's following them, thank you for that, because this is confusing as hell. And knowing that I can go to a single source of information, that's a real important thing. Congratulations on how you're making this manageable for people, because you're going to have to find your new value. I know the Halifax Chamber used to make all their money off events. Well, I mean, where are events going? Unless we're going to show up here, this is going to be interesting for associations. So what is their new normal? Okay, folks. So the hockey stick, you're going to go through it as an organization, manage on the way down, ready for it on the way out. Folks, only 9% of organizations came out of 08-09 thriving. That's it. And yet in the same time period, Airbnb, WhatsApp, Uber, Venmo, Slack, all of those were created in the economic vortex of 08-09. So you've got this pre-existing businesses seem to have a hard job getting out of how they played in the market before to get to the new way, right? Whereas new upstarts have no problem at all. Okay, so as we go here, if you look at this, I just want to make sure that I remind you of this wonderfully titled medical economics paper. Never waste a crisis. Don't waste a crisis. Your patients are your own. Churchill said a variation of this in the Second World War. Ted Leonosis Ted Leonosis runs AOL, owns the Washington Capitals, writes a book called The Business of Happiness. Awesome businessman. He flew around in a plane at 28 years of age and the wheels wouldn't come down. And he swore that if he got back on the ground that he would live a different life. And he writes in the opening chapter, never waste a crisis. Folks, this is a natural reset point. Well, it's an unnatural reset point for your business, but it is a reset point. You got to be able to move quick, but it's a reset point for your business. Don't waste this crisis. You got to rethink it. And you're going to have to live in 3 worlds. What did I have? What could I have in the touchless economy? What will that look like once we're back to post-vaccine, 2 years away? You're going to have to live in those 3 worlds and be making decisions around transition and timing constantly. One of the consequences of having spent a lot of time studying instead of working is that I've actually read Darwin. And most people quote Darwin and they say survival of the fittest. He never actually said that. And if you look over the long course of human history and even beyond that, it is the species that are most adaptable to change. It is the businesses that are the most adaptable to change that win in the long term. What I can tell you from all of our work in change is that 70% of change fails. 20% of it gives you a little bit of the return. Only 10% of it gives you the time, quality, and cost you set out to do. So only 10% of change works well, and yet the only constant in life, whether it happens fast or slow, is change. This is the conundrum of every organization, right? And I'm going to ask you a simple question. Are you in love with your current solution, or are you in love with the problem you solve? If you're in love with your current solution, you are in big trouble in this current environment. If you are in love with the problem you solve, you can reinvent yourself and solve that problem. If you're in love with the solution, it's going to be a hard go. Okay. 3 mental models as you're rethinking your business: safety, liquidity, creativity. Before you make any decisions, put them through these lenses. Is it safe for customers and colleagues? Will it bring me cash in the right time frame? And have I thought enough about it? Have I thought about different angles? This is the time where you want to, that person who has 100 ideas a minute, you want them in the room. Not because the 100 ideas are good. In fact, 97 of them are crap, but they may get that third of those 3 that are great. I need them in the room right now. You know those people, those entrepreneurial thinkers that you go, oh my God, they're exhausting. Yeah, get them in the room right now. You need their creativity. Okay. overview of what we're about to go for the rest of this. This is what organizations follow. Forecast, plan, execute, learn, reforecast, replan, execute. It all starts with why, though. Why are you doing this in the first place? My grandmother taught me a lot of lessons as I was growing up. That's Merv's father, or Merv's mother, rather. The most important lesson she taught me was this. If you don't like it, Matt, don't get good at it. So if the business you had pre-pandemic was not one you liked, don't rebuild it. Build something else. Take all the problems, all the crap you didn't like. This is a reset point for you. Why? Why? Go to Simon Sinek's 2009 talk. It's 20 minutes worth listening to. It's 20 minutes worth listening to. Again, folks, we go to Jim Collins's Hedgehog to use a model to understand why I exist. Why I exist. What are you deeply passionate about? What are you the best in the world at? And what is the financial model that allows you to survive? Folks, you're going to need to become cash accountants through this. And the one thing that I'll tell you on the financial model, and the reason why it's part of every good why, is because cash to an organization is like oxygen to a human. If you wake up in the morning without oxygen, you don't really care what color the shirt is you're putting on. Same thing with a business. And so that's why I got to get the financial model right as well. And that's all changing. Folks, in order to service your customer, you're going to have to increase safety protocols. My guess is in order to increase safety protocols, some of your expenses are going to go up. You have an opportunity to change the pricing model. My God, anybody who went through the first 3 weeks and started doing 50% off, please buy anything, Jesus, I'm desperate. Don't do that. Folks, your stuff still has value in the market. You just got to figure out how to position it again in the new market. Right? I hated those price drops. If you want to give people time to pay off, that's fine. That's different. But price drops, no. So we'll get to this. What is this? This is nice in theory. What is this for simplicity? Okay. For simplicity, it's this. Make the world a better place, one organization at a time, focused in Atlantic Canada. What's the value prop? We, I believe, have a track record of, if you take the 28 people who are with us, we have hundreds of years of helping organizations out of crisis and helping them scale. We're the best in the world. I would put us up against anybody on helping organizations out of crisis and helping them scale. And what's the financial model? Well, it was a shits for about 2 weeks, to be honest. And then about week 3, we started to stabilize, and we're in that stabilized period. We're still rethinking our model. What's this going to look like? How do we do this? We used to be in a room with sticky notes and help rebuild organizations. How do I do it when I'm staring at a Logitech webcam? Right? I mean, that's we're having some early success, but that's with clients who love us. Are we going to be able to translate that to new clients? This is all what we're thinking about. How do we do that? Okay. There's a reason why we put this in a circle for you now. Now that you know why you exist and what you're trying to build. My guess is it's very similar to the past, but the how has changed. And so in that world, you got to go to forecast, plan, execute. Forecast, plan, execute. Learn. Forecast again, plan, execute. This is a cycle companies normally go through, except they go through it once a year, or they go through it once every 5 years, or they go through it, if they're really good, once a quarter. You now need to do it about once a week because too much is changing. Folks, 3 weeks ago, we had to put people on EI, a good crop of our people, because there was no other alternative. Then all of a sudden the wage subsidy came out. Okay, well that changed everything on the cash forecast. Excuse me, changed everything on the cash forecast, back to the drawing board. Right? Like this is, you got to be able to go through this cycle. And this is nothing more than a learning loop, but this is what we're helping organizations do. First thing's the forecast. Customers, cash, constraints. So let's rip through this. Forecasting for customers. You need 2 forecasts. What's the 8-week look like and what's the 12-month look like? And you're going, Matt, how could I have a 12-month? Well, you better look beyond the 8-week because the 8-week will fool you because it's full of customers from the previous pre-COVID world. Where are all the new customers? And if you're one of those lucky businesses, one of those lucky 10% of businesses who's thriving right now, we have one of those businesses in our portfolio. So some of you may or may not know, we're not only paid yackers to help companies improve, innovate, and grow. We have a small equity portfolio. We have a biotech company. We got a sign company. We have an engineering firm. and there is a couple of professional services firms that we are minority equity partners in. So we don't only just get paid to tell people the theory of what they could do, we put the engines on our own companies. So in those, we have an engineering firm that does modeling of buildings. Well, it turns out when nobody's in buildings, it's a great time to go in and do the modeling. They've been going through the roof. And then all of a sudden, nobody can visit museums anymore, and they have the capability to do virtual tours. Well, they had a new value stream overnight. They're now doing virtual tours. They've done one in Halifax, and they've done a couple of the provincial parks. They're looking at bringing them all over the place as soon as they can get them traveling so that people can visit them from home. Okay, customer forecast. If you haven't done a customer forecast, I'll go back here for a second. If you haven't done a customer forecast, you can't do any of the other 8 steps. Not possible, because you don't know who you're serving. You don't know what problem you're solving. You don't know how you're solving it. Impossible to do anything else until you have a customer forecast. And you're going to go, well, Matt, like, how do I get it in this environment? What's a forecast, guys? A forecast is a guess. It's your best guess with the information you have. All forecasts are wrong. Doesn't mean you don't do them. It means you do them, you learn, and you update them, right? Okay, so forecast, customer, cash, constraints. We got this for you. There's the customer bit, then there's the cash bit. Cash is real simple. How much money do I have and how much access to credit do I have? Awesome. Now, how much is going out every week? How much is coming in? I need an 8-week cash flow forecast because I need to know what I'm doing. You've got to see it to the penny right now. And folks, anybody who knows me knows that the last thing on earth I want to do is sit down and review the details of a cash flow forecast to the penny. I'd rather jump in a tub full of scissors than do that. But I have to, as a leader and as a majority shareholder in a couple of the other businesses and a minority shareholder in Symplicity, I've got to know that. So your cash forecast becomes paramount because it tells you your runway. Then the one everybody forgets, constraints. Everybody forgets constraints. Folks, you all have single points of failure. You got a supply chain, you've got people, and you've got minutes. So you got people with skills, minutes, you can use them in a supply chain. Those are the 3 constraints you want to get at. Now, folks, remember, this is a high-level overview of what we do. If you want more of this next week, we'll have this session again on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, we have customers, cash, and constraints. We do the forecast. On Thursday, we do the plan. And on Friday, we do the execution piece. So we spend an hour on each one of them. That's next week. So if you feel like, holy geez, I'm overwhelmed right now, that's fine. I'm throwing a bunch at you so you have this. So if we never see each other again, at least we've done our job of getting you these models, right? And you can have, we'll get them out through the Moncton Chamber for sure. Okay, the next thing now that you've gone from the forecast is go to the plan. So after I've got a forecast of customer, cash, and constraints, I got to go to the plan. And the plan is a triple C exercise. What am I going to cut? What am I going to control? What am I going to continuously improve? Take a look at the budget. You'll find all kinds of gems on the fixed expenses. My CFO and I went through it on Tuesday the 17th. We found a bunch of stuff. Then my aunt, who's been our bookkeeper for 7 years and knows where all the dead bodies are buried, went over it as well. And she found a whole bunch more. We found $30,000 of non-salary expenses on an annualized basis we could cut out. You're going to find it too. And we're not a $10 million company, folks. So, you're going, yeah, man, that's good for you. Any $1 million company will conservatively find $10,000 to $20,000. Any $1 million company. It's all there. Subscriptions, perks, stuff that you didn't even realize you're still buying. Go look at it. I'm sure you've done that by now. We're 4 weeks into this, but that's the cut. Then, folks, on the HR side, I see a bunch of people who are posting online and saying, the companies that stick with their people be the ones that are remembered, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, folks, I agree with that 100%, right up to the point where if there is no business on the other side, it doesn't matter how you treat your people through it. You didn't make anything for them to have on the other side. So what I will say with cuts is this: cut once and cut deep. Cut once and cut deep. Paul LeBlanc, serial entrepreneur in Atlantic, Canada, wrote a brilliant article that you'll get at the end of this that talks about the 9 things you need to consider. Folks, I'm going to give you 2 examples. You got a 10-person organization and one cuts a person a week for 5 weeks. The other organization cuts 6 people on week 1 and brings 1 back midway through. Both teams have 5 people on the other side. Which team is motivated? The one that actually feels like they're winning and has brought it back. The other one's had a death by 1,000 cuts. That's why you got to step back, cut once, cut deep. Control, what are you putting controls around? Continuously improve. This is the lever that the best always use. Toyota in 2008 took everybody off the night shift and put them on continuous improvement. IKEA is doing that right now. The best organizations know how to focus people on improvement when they have downtime, and they know which improvement brings them ROI. Do you know which one? With this wage subsidy coming in, folks, you have the opportunity to bring people back at 75% of their wage. It costs you nothing, and you could put them on improvement. Most business owners I've talked to haven't even got their head around that. What a gift of people working on the future of your business if you can galvanize it. If you can't, if you don't even know what your business is going to look like, you can't take advantage of this. This is why the market leaders always do well in recessions, right? Warren Buffett said, you only know who's naked when the tide goes out. Well, the tide's going out and it's going out fast. Do you know what your business is going to be on the other side? And do you know what you're improving? Okay. Very quickly through this final step, sequence the list. You'll have 3 lists. Nothing will kill your organization faster than telling somebody that here's the 3 priorities. They have equal priority. Do you know that the word priority wasn't even pluralized till the beginning of the 20th century? Because if you have priorities, what don't you have? A priority. Sequence the list so people know where to put their effort. Final bit, and the final bit of this rambling thing to make sure that you have some sort of models to navigate this is this. If you're going to execute this well, what every crisis management methodology will tell you is this. Ramp up the cadence of the meetings. If you used to meet once a month, meet once a week. If you used to meet once a week, meet once a day. If you used to meet once a day, meet 4 times a day on whatever you're meeting on. When I ramp up the cadence of the meetings, I connect everybody and align everybody, and I increase the clarity of one narrative in an organization. You don't need to fight this battle on 2 fronts, folks. You don't need to fight it out there trying to figure out what you're going to do, and in here trying to convince everybody you're on the same page. Quickest way to do that is not 100 one-on-one conversations. It's quick cadence of meetings. Folks, at Symplicity, we look at our monthly plan now weekly. We look out 8 weeks and look out 6 months. We look at that once a week. We meet once a day as a team, 8 a.m., 15 minutes, 4:30 p.m., 20 minutes. Plan, do, check, act for the day. Plan, do for the day on the major topics. Everybody goes off in their own teams, does their thing. Check, act at the end of the day. How are we doing? Increase the cadence. There's some stuff for you to go through here. Final bit, just this past weekend, mental health surpassed COVID-19 on Google Trends. We are headed into a period of time where we are going to have to become deeply human if we're going to survive to the other side of this in one piece. And that's going to require a lot of compassion, a lot of empathy. People have different coping mechanisms and different ways to cope. If you're going to lead a team through this, you got to realize that when someone breaks, it's a lot like if you study the military, you know PTSD, even if you've heard from outside of it. And the best way that I've heard it described is we all have a bag of peanuts. And every time you encounter an event that just drives your stress levels, you take one out. And everybody has a different size bag, but eventually we all get to the bottom of it. Right? And so just because someone gets there earlier or goes through different emotions earlier, I mean, we're going to have to figure out the rest of their life. We're working from home. I can hear my daughter right now running back and forth. Every once in a while, she'll knock on the door. I mean, that didn't happen in my other job, right? So we got to have a lot of empathy and compassion for this new normal as we go through. The best leaders will figure out how to do it. They'll figure out that they give people a chance and they connect to the purpose, and it's amazing. So folks, I've gone to 11:40. That's probably longer than I should have because I want to get to Q&As, but I want to make sure that you understand that we got just hammered on Maslow's hierarchy of needs here. We got knocked right back down to physiological and safety. And so we're all looking for community right now. If you want to know where your customers are, double down on your top 25% of customers. Reach out to them, ask them how they're doing. We're all looking for community right now. We're looking for belonging again. So folks, forecast, plan, execute, reforecast, replan, execute. Again, it's a circle. And there are great ones to do it. We'll send you out this and we'll send you out the links. Folks, thanks for having me. I got 20 minutes. I'm going to stick around because this becomes real when it's your business. So thanks, folks.
Thanks, Matt. That was a great presentation. A lot to digest there, and I'm glad you're going to follow up with some takeaways. A couple of points I just want to mention before we get to the questions. You ended with talking about the importance of mental health. We've got a couple of upcoming Zoom webinars that are going to focus on that. One next week. I think Darren Duguay of Emotional Coaching is on this one. Darren's going to present one next Thursday, and the week after, Andrew LeBlanc and the people from Atlantic Wellness Center, because I think as this continues, mental health and engagement of your people is going to become increasingly important.
Absolutely. Yeah, no question.
Okay, let's just see what we got here. There's one question that I wanted to start off with. You started off, Matt, talking about, when we come out of the worst of the pandemic, we are still likely looking at a 16 to 24 month touchless economy, you called it.
Yep.
Can every business retool, innovate to take advantage of that, or are some, do you feel, going to have a harder time adjusting to this new reality?
I think everyone can. I've been actually pleasantly surprised by the types that I would have said a physiotherapist would have had one heck of a time doing that. And I've been personally involved with 3 groups. One's multi-million dollar organization. 2 others are smaller practices that have successfully made the move to telehealth and are actually more profitable now in week 5. One of them is than they were before the pandemic, because they've been able to figure out the scheduling process. I think it all comes back to what problem are you solving? Does it still need solving? And in what way can I do this in the touchless economy? There's a fantastic PDF put out by the Innovation Board that starts to detail the touchless economy and what it's going to look like, right? If out of the last recession came the sharing economy, Airbnb, Uber, etc., out of this one's going to come the touchless economy. So you only get there by, we get to this one in the customer webinar we do, but most people understand their product or service through the lens of the product and service. My grandfather was a roofer, and he understood roofing and would have described to you roofing instead of describing the problem that he solved, right? And the problem he solved was either safety, return on investment, or aesthetics, right? Which problem? And there are 3 different types of customers. And then those 3 customers had 3 different types of budgets. Same thing's going to be for you. What problem do you, anybody who's in law right now, one of the problems with us being on house arrest, I try and make sure that we see the world as it is. The divorce rate in Wuhan went up 20% after the heightened version of the pandemic, right? We are seeing cases of domestic violence, et cetera, increase as people are in the same area. There's some stuff going on. What's that mean for your business, right? Not only what's it mean for society, yes, but what's it mean for your business too? But I think there's room for everybody. There really is.
Yeah. I just like to remind everybody, if you'd like to pose a question, use the chat button at the bottom of the screen and it will appear. One other thing you mentioned, Matt, was, and I hadn't thought of this, but using those 75% wage subsidized employees to think about innovation in this next period. A lot of them might be sitting at home and you might be thinking, how do I use them in this period if they can't connect directly with their customers? Yeah,
I'm trying to help as many business owners get their head around this. You're going to have to go, what do I look like in the touchless economy? Now, what capability do I need to have that I don't have today? Now, how can I use this 10-week period to build that capability? Mm-hmm. Right? And it's a golden opportunity. And you're never going to get, who else? Think about bringing back 10 people at $45,000 a year annualized. It's $450,000. Who's going to pump $500,000 into your business to help you improve it? No one. And you've got an opportunity right now for that to happen if you're down 30%. If you're not down 30% or 15% in March, 30% in April and May, then congratulations, you've gotten through this. Now, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with your improvement time to make sure that it's not just a temporary thing, right? There's a lot of people caught right now with 8-10 weeks of work that have a big cliff coming. right? So that's one of the things that they're going to have to figure out in Ottawa is how do they deal with those businesses. Okay, Darren. Yeah, okay. Just a thank you from Darren.
Yeah.
Any other questions, folks? This gets real when it's yours. Normally there's somewhere between 10 and 90 questions. There we go. Matt, as a one-on-one nail professional and educator, do you have any ideas on what service-based beauty professionals can do? Off the cuff question. Yeah. I've seen some, I mean, everything is moving to how do you build community around what your hyper customers care about, right? And then what are the problems you need to solve out of that? So a lot of professionals who did services are migrating to becoming experts on the products and owning their customers to get their products to them and becoming experts at helping people do it themselves. Right? So that's a quick migration that you're seeing in the gym world, you're seeing in the beauty world, is we've gone from doing the work to supplying the products and coaching people on how to do it themselves. How quickly can you go there with your tribe? Right? That's what I've seen in the health professional world, and in the beauty world and in the physical fitness world.
One thing that I was just on a Zoom call before this one, and the president of ACOA was among the attendees, and we asked him, what do you see coming out of this? And he said, I'm going to be frank, I don't think government can be all things to all people in terms of supporting every business through this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, those that do, and he mentioned innovate and retool, will be those with the better chance of survival.
Yeah, and the world currently has to move digital, which if the late 90s, early 2000s, we started globalization in earnest, and 08, 09, basically, we came out of that recession with a bunch of superpower businesses that really survived that. This one has brought us all infinitely closer. Folks, on our webinars, we've had people from South Africa, all over the US, all over Canada, Europe. That would have never happened before. So your markets become infinitely huger. You just can't do it one-on-one. It gives these one-on-one professionals, though, an opportunity to migrate to a bigger market that they would have never had, an export market, for sure. Okay, coming out of this, how long or strict will the physical distancing be? I'm used to having 15 to 20 people on site at a time. Is this still going to be reasonable to expect in the future? Brian, are you in the construction world? Just trying to get my bearings on this. I'll answer it as if you are, and then if you aren't, entertainment world. Okay, so you're going to have to deal with new physical distancing protocols for the next 2 years. We're going to deal with spikes. McGinnis Cooper just put out a graph that said something along the lines of 30% in the first wave. It's going to come down, then it's going to spike again 10%, then it's going to come down, another spike at 10%. Is going to continue along that until we find a vaccine. And so I'm not planning for any less than 2 years of new physical distancing protocols, which will mean things like face shields. Those shields that are coming out, or going, oh, it's ridiculous. Why would you put a face shield? Folks, we touch our face over 3,000 times a day. The face shield's not for other people. It's for ourselves to make sure we don't touch our face. The mask is more for other people, but the face shield is to make sure we don't touch ourselves on that. You're going to have signage requirements, safety training requirements, and PPE requirements that are going to come in to any world that has 15 to 20 people on site. You're going to have that. And so you would want to think about, what does that mean? What are the costs going to mean? What's that mean for your pricing? What's that mean for how I go to the market now? Right? And there's lots of room. There's lots of empathy for figuring this out along the way.
I think if anybody's looking for a new business opportunity, something around signage, safety, and PPE might be the way to go.
It's funny you say that, John. We're working on that right now.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So our sign company pivoted, and it's not quite public yet, but I'll say it here. Our sign, it'll be all over the news on Tuesday, Wednesday. Our sign company pivoted, and within 2.5 weeks, we were making the face shields because we had the equipment. Those face shields are the same ones that are being used in New York and Mount Sinai. And we have a large order from the government in New Brunswick that happened within 2.5 weeks. Like, in what world could you ever get through procurement of a government in 2.5 weeks? It didn't exist before. So barriers are falling down all over the place for that, right? Okay, what do you foresee for the construction industry? We're a local countertop manufacturer just a year old and are seeing potential opportunity given that many countertop distributors here rely on the Quebec supply chain and overseas manufacturers. Thoughts, advice? Yeah, Emma, I believe what you're going to see is the home reno and the backyard world blow up. I believe that people are going to be stuck in their houses and they're going to be staring at the same thing. And if you can do it safely, especially backyards, folks, what is Trudeau doing with this 75%? He's driving liquidity into the market. What does disability pay someone? They pay them 66%. How did they get to 66%? They got there because that's the amount of money you're required when you're not moving that much of your regular salary. 75% is more than that. There is going to be an unending amount of money that no one can seem to friggin' spend because all of their old habits of where they would have spent it are done, with the exception of the online shopping gurus. But you're going to have and then I'm going to spend a whole bunch of time in my backyard. So I think the reno world, as long as you can provide them a place to go, is going to blow up. All this touchless forecasting for our business in the coming times will be very interesting and challenging for those in the daycare, childcare industries. Absolutely. So that I don't know what the answer is going to be to that, other than you're going to want to get familiar with contactless thermometers. So the early way to deal with coronavirus, there are 3 early indicators that you may be infected: fever, taste, and smell senses. Those are the senses that usually go. So a lot of places in Asia are actually using contactless thermometers as a first indicator of whether you can come in or out. You're going to have to be totally up to speed on what, I mean, a daycare is a place where, I mean, my daughter was there, right? Like that's just a place where we trade flus and everything else and then come home and give them to our families. So it doesn't matter what you do in there. It's so hard to run that type of industry. How are you going to respond to the safety protocols is going to be very, very, it's going to be interesting because it's such a tough business. It's amazing how caring these individuals are, and it's almost impossible to make money and everybody feels it's overpriced. Like it's a tough business as it is, never mind with increased safety. Okay. Any other questions you want to go through? I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you, Linda. Is it reasonable to think that I will not be servicing clients in the next 6 months or more like 1 year, or should I forecast for longer in the new time? So here's the issue with any hairdresser, any person who provides beauty services. How are you going to ensure you are safe? How are you going to ensure the person coming to see you is safe? And what is the risk you're willing to tolerate, and how are you going to clean between them? When the restrictions get less, that's what you're going to have to figure out. And then you're going to have to figure out which clients are willing to do it. And there's going to be, I mean, I've talked to a couple entrepreneurs who would pay about $200 right now for a haircut after 4 weeks. So, you know, there's going to be people who figure this out, but your old pricing model isn't going to work in that arena because of the new safety protocols you're going to have to be. So you're going to have to really focus on the 25 to 30% of your customers who are still willing to come see you when it lessens, if you want to. And then you're going to have to focus on safety in a serious way, because we're going to have to live with this. So these services are going to come back online, but they're not going to be same price. And if they are, I don't know how people are doing it. I really don't. I would want a second or third value stream if I were you, Jessica. I would want my primary money coming from products and training, not from the touch economy.
Okay, I think that's it. If anybody has any other questions, I'll just wrap up. Matt, thank you so much. This has been a dynamic hour and lots of great information jammed into that. You mentioned your specific one-on-ones for forecasting, planning, and executing next week.
Yeah, they're up there on the screen now. The 14th, 15th, 16th, and 17th. The 14th we'll go through Out of Crisis again. It'll be a little bit updated and we'll focus on other things. 15th, 16th, and 17th, forecast, plan, execute. An hour on each one, more detail.
And people can register for those on your own website. Is that right?
Yep, simplicity.ca. It's right on the main page. It couldn't be easier to register.
Okay, perfect. I just want to mention before we close off a couple of upcoming webinars. I mentioned Darren Duguay coming up next Thursday to talk about emotional coaching. I've had that session before, and it's fantastic. The other one that is just fresh out of the box, I'm not sure if the email went out yet, but next Tuesday at 11 a.m., we're going to have Federal Small Business Minister Melanie Joly for a Q&A with our members from 11 to 12. So, yeah, that's your opportunity to ask her some questions about gaps in assistance or where they see things going in terms of forecasting. So if it's not available yet, later today, you'll be able to register for that on our website. So we're looking forward to that one. We only have 100 spots, so register early. Then the week after next, we have a couple more webinars coming up as well. And if anybody has any ideas about what you'd like to hear about, topics on these webinars, please let us know. This is our way. Matt said events are going to be are different going forward. I know Xavier of our staff, that's his job, and he's already laying awake at night thinking, how do we reinvent ourselves? And what's the business model for events going forward in this touchless economy? So with that, I want to thank everybody for attending. Matt, thanks again for your time. Terrific stuff. Everybody stay safe. Bonne journée for everyone, and have a good day. Bye for now.
Merci bien. À la prochaine.
À la prochaine.
Bye.
Bye.